You're listening to the Skylight Books podcast. We're an independent, general interest bookstore putting great reads in the hands of people in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles. Hosted by resident Skylighters, we're here to bring you new and exciting author conversations, group reads, and bookseller chats. Happy listening.
Hello and welcome to the final episode in the Skylit series, a very special series about LA literature. My name is Emily VanKoughnett.
I'm Alena Saunders.
Welcome. And today we're here to discuss the book, The White Boy Shuffle by Paul Beatty. Beatty?
Beatty.
Beatty.
I think,
yeah.
Yes.
I think I'm overcomplicating it.
I think we might
start spinning out.
It's the last episode.
It's the last
very
episode.
Stressed.
Yes, very stressed. But yeah, so just jumping right into it, White Boy Shuffle is the first novel from Paul Beatty, who goes on in life. He's still in life.
He's still there.
To win the Man Booker. He's the first American to win the Man Booker.
Yeah, for the sellout, right?
Yeah, because I guess Marlon James is technically Jamaican, even though he...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, but before The White Boy Shuffle, he published a couple books of poetry.
Yes.
Which I was like,
yeah, so originally a poet, 2 collections out in the world. He then, in 1996, published The White Boy Shuffle.
Yeah.
And we're here to talk about that book today.
Yeah. So, Emily, how would you describe The White Boy Shuffle?
White Boy Shuffle is this book about a young man. It's a coming-of-age story set in LA. He begins in Santa Monica, and then he moves to West LA when his mom is like, you need to live with other Black people, because he's living like this white surfer boy existence. He's Black. So that is also very important to this book. But it's a book about him coming of age in this like community that he really didn't seem to fit in. And eventually he becomes a poet, a basketball star, and like a leader of a political movement.
Yeah.
He's like a voice for people in his community and finds like fame across the country. I think that's what it's about. It's about a lot of things. What do you think it's about?
Yeah, no, that was a really good way of describing it. This book is like, it's so good. It's so fun to read. And like the thing I was thinking most about when I was reading this book is I was like, what exactly, like, how would you categorize this book? Because it doesn't seem like it's trying to be any one thing, which is what I really love about it. You know, like, it's like extremely funny, which allows it to be like very moving at certain points. But I was also really struck by like the use of language, and like you can just tell that Paul Beatty like is just such a master of language, you know, and like really cares about it, which is something that I really like. It really drew me into this book from basically like the first line. It's like the energy's there. Okay, now I'm getting like
you're getting ahead of yourself.
I'm getting really ahead of myself.
What is this book about, Alena? That was the question.
Yes, okay. Coming of age of Gunnar
Kaufman, who comes from like a long lineage of Uncle Tom type characters.
Yeah.
So like race betrayers, essentially.
Yeah, which
I also am saying that, and I'm thinking about the line in the book where he's like, white people love to use the phrase Uncle Tom.
Me too.
And it's like white people betray white people all the time.
And there's like no designated
term for
it.
And I'm like, so here I am saying Uncle Tom. I'm like, God, Paul Beatty, roast me for this.
Yeah, I know. Whenever I'm trying to recommend a book to someone, I always have like, or when somebody asks me like, what's this book about? I'm always like,
yeah, it's hard.
Like, I don't know, but I just know that I enjoyed the experience of reading this book. And so like, that's how I feel with this book. I'm like, it is like a coming of age story. It's comedic, it's moving. There's like, you know, moments of historical significance in the book. But like that's like I would have trouble describing it as any one thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think it's like it is satire, but it's also not like a complete satire. Like it's not
I wouldn't even
full.
Yeah.
Like he's satirizing aspects, I think, of like the Black experience. I think he writes more satire in some of his other work also, but
yeah,
it's like that level of comedy. But yeah, if somebody's like, I'm looking for a funny book, I'm like, this book is so funny.
It's
but like
so funny.
Would I say it's like
a purely funny book? No.
Yeah, I wouldn't be like, if somebody asked me for a funny book, I would like maybe hesitate. Like I'm like, if you like dark humor, this is for you for sure.
Totally.
But if you're looking for a light, fun time, I'd be like a little scared.
Yeah,
to like recommend it.
Yeah, same. But I would still just be like, well, take it because it's amazing, and you have to read it.
You have to read it.
But you're right, because he does. Beatty does like dip his toe into like satire, like throughout, like in places throughout the book.
Yeah.
But I would not call this book a satire.
Yeah, I think it's like the types of humor is like it's close to satire. It's dark.
Yeah.
Like he does like reference Richard Pryor a fair amount. And so it's kind of like that realm of writing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Why did we pick this book, Alena?
We picked this book, I believe because we were talking about because we had just come off of Acosta, right?
Yeah.
With that kind of political movement.
And I think we were like looking for like the final chapter of this, because this is the final episode of this season.
Yeah.
Kind of the final chapter. And like, so this lands, it's set around 92. It's this year, 2022, is the 30th anniversary of the Rodney King riots.
Yeah.
And there is a dedicated part of this book to the Rodney King riots.
Yeah.
It's so much smaller than I thought.
Yeah, which is something that I really loved, and that like we talked about a little bit before we started recording, but like the way that it's represented in the book is very like, it's just, it kind of plays into like real, like how we experience these kind of historic moments in real life, which is like, even if you're kind of in the neighborhood or in the vicinity of this like massive thing that's happening, you don't necessarily like, it's not like the main part of your life. You know what I'm saying? Does that make any, I feel like I said it better before.
No, totally. I think that makes full sense. And it's like in the book, Gunnar is at basketball practice and his coach is like keeping him super late because he's like, the second you go out there, you guys are going to become revolutionaries. It's going to like alter your life, which it really truly does in many ways. Like Gunnar goes and there's so much that happens and it's like such a small section.
Yes.
And it's like mainly what happens is they take part in the looting, him and his best friend Scobie. And so he has two best friends in the book, Scobie and Paco Loco, who are like, we're going to touch on this also, but they're his best friends. They're really important to him. And they're like, very much help define him as a person. But yeah, they go and they steal this safe. Like first him and Scobie are like trying to find anything to loot because looting is fun.
Yeah.
And then they go and like,
they meet up with one of Psycho Loco's
friends. So they like meet up with Psycho Loco's in a gang. Obviously, his name's Psycho Loco, but like, and
they're like, "Can you drive us home?" They're like, "No time." And so they go to meet up with Psycho Loco, who's gotten this safe.
Yeah, he's getting this safe that he's been plotting to steal for 9 years, and
so funny.
They're stealing the safe, and like this is their whole thing during like this big major like historic moment, and they have like a nice moment where they like watch it all on the TV. And Gunnar has like a moment of like an epiphany of like, there's no way these like cops are getting away with like everything, everything. They're not, there's not one charge against them. And then so he goes looting. And then at the very end of it, his dad, who works for the LAPD as a sketch artist and is an Uncle Tom type character, as like every Kaufman man is, like shoots him with a rubber bullet while he's stealing this safe, and like he goes to coma.
Yeah, and like beats him up. Yeah.
And like beats him up, his own son. And so I think like that, while it's a small moment in the book, is like a huge moment in Gunnar's life that pushes him towards being the revolutionary figure he'll be later in life.
Yeah, I think
it like makes him fully reject white society in like a way.
Yeah. I also think like just to
and his father.
Yeah, and definitely his father for sure.
Fucking hates his dad after that.
I also thought like that moment is so it's so moving because like throughout the book the use of like violence is almost always tangled up with comedy, you know, but at that point that's like one of the very few moments where it really isn't.
Yeah,
it's just like very tragic, you
yeah
know?
Like there's funny things about the looting
for sure, but
and
like that
and so you're like
moment,
yeah, but that moment it's just like you just like I think you experience alongside him like he like pops out to distract his dad.
Yeah.
He like hears his dad and it's just like a really big oh fuck moment.
Yeah.
And it's really tragic. And, you know, he's had a complicated relationship with his dad who's kind of estranged and also wants him to be behaving a certain way.
Yeah.
And this isn't to say that like Gunnar has had so many run-ins with the law before that.
Yeah.
I think he's just like the ways in which like the cops have pursued him is like because he is like a young Black man. And he had like when he was living in Santa Monica had kerfuffles with like beach police.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so he's like towing the line.
Yeah.
But there's like you're right that it's like everything is so funny, and that moment is like really serious.
Yeah, and there's like a few other moments like that in the book where like, and that's what I think is so masterful is like, you know, because I feel like a lot of lesser writers would be writing in one, like this story could have been written in one tone.
Yeah.
Which would have changed the entire thing and made it completely like not interesting. But the way that this book is so many different things is what keeps the energy in the book moving forward. You know what I mean?
The writing is so energetic, and it feels like almost like thinking about it like a song. It's like that point in the book would be like the drums drop out or something, and then it's just like just this other thing. Like it's just like one aspect of the many layers of his writing is like suddenly gone.
Yeah, it's like really astounding to actually look at, like as a person who wants to write, you know, to be like, oh wow, that is like mastery.
Yeah,
really, to be able to be that funny and then turn and be like that moving, you know, like because I mean it's just really I just love this book. I really think
I'm like I could not recommend this book more.
Can I read my favorite funny violent part?
Yeah, read your favorite funny violent part.
Okay, so this is Psycho Loco.
Yeah, so Psycho Loco is one of Gunnar's best friends who he meets upon moving to when his mom moves them out of Santa Monica to the more Black neighborhood Hillside. He moves in like next door, basically.
Yeah, and I'm honestly having trouble remembering what part. I just marked it because I thought like the actual line to line was so well written and so funny. But I think Psycho Loco is talking to his fellow gang members about leaving the gang.
He's like mad that he's the one that only kills all the time.
Yeah, he's the only one kind of like holding up the reputation. Like always for like a
vengeance killing. And also, oh my god, what is their name of the gang?
The gun-toting
hoodlums?
Hooligans. Gun-toting hooligans, but they don't carry guns.
Yeah, they only use like bows and arrows. It's like really weird. Bows
and arrows and spears, which I fucking love. It's so funny. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is when you know, he's kind of like, I'm gonna leave, whatever. So Psycho Loco went into his proud drunken warrior tirade. What do you mean we? Every time one of us gets capped, who does the revenge killing? My ass. When I first moved here, you motherfuckers were scared of every vato on the block, especially Raymond Keniston. Juan Julio, Raymond took my money. Raymond threw my bike off the roof. Raymond threw my father into the garbage truck. Punk ass yellow rat bastard Joe Shenanigans. When Raymond stepped on your pet frog Kermie on purpose, did I make him eat it? And every fly that landed on your screen door for 2 weeks. Oh my god, like it's so funny.
It's so funny.
Threw my dad into the garbage truck.
Yeah. Oh
like,
my god.
So funny.
Yeah.
And I just like love that.
And it makes it like, yeah, it's like he befriends this dude who's like been to prison. And he's like 15. Like when like Gunnar moves there, he's like 15 and he befriends this dude who's like been to prison. Cause he thinks like Paco Loco thinks he's funny and can tell he's very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Gunnar learns how to navigate the world in a way that he's like, okay, like these are my strengths. I'm super smart.
Yeah.
And like willing to try anything. Like it's not that he makes a fool of himself, but it's like almost that he has a sense of like comedic timing or like has a sense of like performance about him, because like everything he does, he's like does it with like his whole heart. Like the first time he slam dunks, he's like never played basketball before in his life, but he's like, okay, I learned like these 2 things one time.
Yeah.
I know not to like dribble with both hands.
Yeah, the way.
And I like know that if I jump up in the air and I come back down with the ball, then that's traveling. So he like jumps up in the air and his like legs are like
moving.
I'm doing something that's bad for podcasts. I'm waving my hands back and forth. His legs are like kicking. He's kicking. He's like swimming through the air, and then he like lands and dunks. Yeah. And it changes his life forever. Yeah. And there are like several moments in the book where he does these things, like even like meeting Paco Loco and meeting Nick Scobie, his other best friend, that are like change his life forever, because he just like finally like hits the right like blend of like his reference points.
Well, it's kind of like this weird thing that I think everybody hopefully goes through at one point in their life, where like the first half of this book, he spends so much time kind of trying to figure out how to fit in to whatever community he's in at the time, you know, whether that's Santa Monica or Hillside. And then like my feeling about it is at a certain point, he's kind of just like, like when he meets Scobie, it's like he's being very, this feels so LA, but like very authentically himself, you know, like he's in the drama club, I think, or like whatever,
like doing Shakespearean shit.
Yeah. And I think that's like, and so then eventually like in the book, he kind of stops trying to mold himself, in which like, he like stops trying to mold himself into what he thinks he should be, and just becomes like, what he always is.
It's like, I think his move, the forced move from Santa Monica to Hillside, like while him and his sisters at first were like so like terrified for themselves and like didn't see themselves doing it, I think he like, I mean, in many ways, I wonder if it like helps him break that like the legend of who he could have been. Like he could have been comfortable as a Kaufman forever, being kind of like assimilating into white culture.
Yeah.
And instead he moves to this like community that I think he finds so much in, like, and finds the heart of who he is. And like in the moments like with the cops, and in the moments with like where he starts to see what's really wrong with America and being Black in America, that's where he starts to learn how to be like, I don't know, it's like his perspective like is able to then create this like collection of poetry that he publishes, and like all this, he becomes the revolutionary figure that he needs to be to like break the like cycle of like the Kaufman man.
Yeah. Well, just as a side note, one thing I really appreciate about this book and the writing is like, you know, like he has that moment where he slam dunks for the first time he plays basketball. He's like already kind of a legend.
Yeah, like immediately he like
immediately
goes back
does
to
it.
Like they'd skipped out on lunch to do it, and then the principal finds out and he's like, but did you really dunk? And then he's like, oh, now I'm gonna get like kind of a free pass. And that's like,
but like I love, and like even when he writes, like there's that long poem he writes and then he writes it up on the wall, or like spray paints it up on the wall or whatever. And the fact that like there's no technical explanation like they're like the author doesn't feel the need to be like, and I was so good at basketball because I don't know, like whatever, you know, or like I paint. I don't know why the painting of that like giant poem on the wall, like there was no description of him doing it. He just said like, and then I went and put it on the wall.
Yeah, there's so many things that happen within like 2 paragraphs, and then you just like cut to something else, and like in a way that it could be disjointing. I think it's like absolutely not. Like I think it.
Yeah, and that's what's like so impressive about it is you could be like, well, how did he do that? But you just accept it because it's part. It just makes, I don't know, it just makes sense. And I think that like if Paul Beatty were to have like taken time to be like, this is why I'm so good at basketball, or like, and this is how I got this ladder and I went and got paint, and like that would slow down like things that like lesser writers would be like, I have to explain this. I have to explain how this happened.
Right, the like minutia and mechanics of things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no need for it because like also he's built this character in Gunner that's just like ballsy.
Yeah.
And like,
and he's also built this world that is just like, it is totally the world, but it is also a little bit off, you know what I mean? Where like
it's like a caricature in some ways.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fact that the gun-toting hooligans are like a gang that uses arrows and bows and spears. And, like that's really like funny, but you can kind of just accept it. You know, I don't know why. It's just
you're
really
like, okay,
hilarious.
in this world.
Yeah. So it's like it's very like interesting. The more I think about this book, the more I'm just like, wow, this is like masterful.
It's masterful. One of the scenes I find the funniest is like when he is starting to get scouted by colleges, and some like ex-alum from, or I guess it's not an ex-alum, an alum from Harvard. An ex-alum. I was like, that's not how that word works. No. An alum from Harvard is like interviewing him and like wooing him.
Oh yeah.
And takes him to his like fancy house, and like Hillside's not a real neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's like a fictitious neighborhood, and there's a big wall built. So it feels very separate.
Yeah.
From the rest of, it's in West LA, but it's still, you know, it's not bougie West LA, but very close to it, as like a lot of neighborhoods in LA are. Like, right, like you're just right up against each other.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, like yes. Yup.
And so this dude like basically lives at the top of the hill from Gunner and is like shit talking his neighborhood without like any awareness that Gunner lives there. Yeah. And they're like talking. He's like, man, once you go to Harvard and you get in, we'll start going rock climbing together. And Gunner is just like, man, fuck this dude. This is so terrible.
Yeah.
I hate this man. He's so stupid. It's like another black man too. And he's just like seeing him for being a fool.
Yeah.
And he literally, the dude like sets him up so he could like go rappelling off the little wall of his house. And instead Gunner is just like, bye. And like rappels all the way home. Like he's like, I do live in Hillside. I do live in hell.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rappel my ass back there. Bye.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like so funny and ridiculous. And like, you kind of feel like when that part happened, I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Is he really doing that? But then you like so easily can just like accept it as like, okay, that's happening. It's, I don't know. It's really good. There's
so many moments of absurdism. Like he gets married.
Yes. Yeah.
In the blink of an eye, he's married.
Oh my God.
With a mail order bride.
Yeah.
Who's the best. I love her.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Yeah. The second that she sticks her hand up his ass.
Oh my God.
I was like, this is love.
So good. So
this is perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you make of the ending?
Yeah. So I think like kind of to walk everyone towards the end, because so much happens in this book, it's hard for us to kind of like get to all the, like, while we're saying there's like the minutia isn't there, he's like working us the whole time.
Totally.
So I think to preface, as we said, Gunner starts writing poems when he's 13.
Yeah.
He's a poet. Somehow he's getting published throughout the world.
Yeah, which I also love that that's just like kind of mentioned on like, it's not like the main thing in his life, you know what I mean? Like that's just kind of,
but he sells
like
126 million copies of his poetry collection.
Yeah,
Watermelon.
Love it.
And so he goes off to, after getting scouted for colleges, he decides to go to Boston University. Goes out there with his wife and with Nicholas Scobie.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like working through a lot. and his time there. And ultimately during a speech at like a rally, tells everyone that the like answer for freedom as Black people is suicide.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just read, because it's a concept that's like introduced at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I forgot about it totally until we got there.
Yeah. You mean like in the prologue or whatever?
Yeah, it's introduced in the prologue. So you know that he's going to be like the messiah for Black people. But yeah, I'm going to read this paragraph because I thought about it throughout the book, obviously. Okay, so it says, in the quest for equality, Black folks have tried everything. We've begged, revolted, entertained, intermarried, and are still treated like shit. Nothing works. So why suffer the slow deaths of toxic addiction and the American work ethic when the immediate gratification of suicide awaits? In glorious defiance of the survival instinct, Negroes stream into hillside California like lemmings. Every day, they wishfully look heavenward, peering into the California smog for a metallic gray atomic dot that will gradually expand until it explodes some 1,000 feet over our natural and processed heads. It will be the emancipation disintegration. Lunch counters, bus seats, and executive washrooms be damned. Our mass suicide will be the ultimate sit-in. And so it's like a kamikaze effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he says this, and like suddenly people all over the country start killing themselves. And then he's like, okay. And like people are like, don't you feel fucked up about it? And he's like, no, I don't feel bad about having people commit suicide because I told them to.
Yeah.
Send me your death poems.
Love.
And then so people start sending him their death poems.
Yeah.
And like, obviously I feel complicated about mass suicide on a realistic level.
Of course.
But there's something so beautiful in this book about the way it's done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that was like Scobie's like a cool dude.
Yeah, he's listening to every great like Black artist from A to Z.
Yeah, which is so good. And also he is also a basketball player. He's the one who gets Gunnar to play basketball for the first time and also has never missed.
Yeah, his whole thing is he's never missed. And this like great thing they talk about in the book, I mean, it's great and tragic, but he is great when they first start playing together on a team, but then people start noticing how great he is and he hates it.
Yeah.
And then when they play together in college, the same thing happens as he starts getting all this notoriety because he never misses. There's like scientists going to the games to figure out how he never misses.
Yeah,
like,
he's kind of poked and prodded and like
he
studied.
He just feels like on display.
Yeah.
And they like talk about how like if you're a white artist, you could vanish into obscurity like J.D. Salinger. Like you could go hide in the woods, but that's not an option as a Black artist.
Yeah.
I like immediately thought about Frank Ocean and just like how impossible it is to like vanish.
Yeah.
Into like to be able to produce an obscurity.
Yeah.
And you can't. And it starts to drive him crazy. And so I think that's like a huge, like, I think in that way, suicide, it's like there are these things like both with his dad and with Scobie where I'm like, not to romanticize suicide, but it must have been a great relief.
Yeah.
To be free of those things. And I think that's the point of this, like, not a suicide pact, but like the mass suicide.
Yeah, I think, I think that's a really good read on it. Yeah. I guess I hadn't really considered the relief part.
I think that's like, because it's like, otherwise you're still existing in this very white world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think that's the concept, right? Is that you're like, will be free of it. And they can't like, Yeah. White people can't stop them anymore.
Yeah. My brain is shutting down.
Yeah, no,
now.
I'm like, I think that's really it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, obviously, I feel like we could talk about this
for so long,
but I think we covered everything.
And I think in closing on this book, I think if you're looking for something insightful about this country, I think it is insightful about LA in that while it's a lot about just straight about Gunnar and his coming of age, he's like a great lens for LA in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's like a specific Black experience of LA, and it makes me think a lot about how LA tries to erase Black communities, and how these neighborhoods aren't celebrated for like the richness that they have. And like even at the end when they're talking about the mass suicide, like basically wiping themselves off the map before the government could wipe them off the map.
Yeah.
They're doing it by their own hand. I think it speaks so clearly to like LA and LA history, and LA history in the 90s, LA history now.
Yeah.
LA, that's not history, but you know, LA at what it is now, like not celebrating, not being like a thing we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Like a place we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
Not without like fear or like, like tropes and stereotypes of like
total cliches. Yeah.
South LA.
Without any depth, you know?
Yeah.
It's always like a very surface level conversation
about
without
crime
any,
and, like,
and there's no like depth or nuance to any of it. It's just like painted as one, you know, painted in whatever. Cut that part, Mick. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I think right, like it's painted in one way, and even like by shrinking the Rodney King aspect of it and expanding other parts of life, I think you see like a wider scope. Like
yeah, exactly.
Of like life.
Yeah.
It's life. And I think this is just like a beautiful portrait of life and then in turn death. But it does make me think really heavily about like communities that this city is trying to erase, essentially.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree with that.
And while it's not overtly that, I do think Paul Beatty doesn't do anything by accident.
Definitely not.
So I think it's so there in that way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Alena.
Thanks, Emily.
And we're back. We are joined on this episode with author Steph Cha, who is the author of Your House Will Pay, winner of the Los Angeles Times Book Prize and the California Book Award and the Juniper Song Crime Trilogy. She's a critic whose work has appeared in the Los Angeles Times, USA Today, and the Los Angeles Review of Books, where she served as noir editor and is the current series editor of the Best American Mystery and Suspense anthology. A native of the San Fernando Valley, she lives in Los Angeles with her family. Welcome, Steph.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so happy to have you. I think when talking about like who to invite on this episode, you were like a clear potential person just because your book, Your House Will Pay, deals so much with the 90s and with race in LA. That it really parallels so much of White Boy Shuffle, but in like a fully different context, right?
I could be funny about anything.
Yeah. No basketball in your book. I think, is there no basketball in your book?
No, there's no basketball. I could not basketball. About basketball.
Yeah, those guys could be out there playing basketball. So what is your relationship with White Boy Shuffle and Paul Beatty's writing?
I read White Boy Shuffle in 2015. At the time, actually, now that I think about it, I had recently started writing Your House Will Pay. And then I met him. He did a Skylight event, actually, where he was he was talking about the sellout. This was before the sellout became the publishing phenomenon that it became. So it was like it was like a well-attended, but not like super crowded event. And I ended up talking to him for a little bit, and he's obviously awesome guy. He's very he's very like soft spoken and like not like kind of in your face, and obviously like incredibly smart. He was in conversation with she wrote Caucasia, Dana something. Wow, I should really know that.
Yeah, I also, and I don't. So
anyway, I read the sellout afterwards, but I went after I had read White Boy Shuffle, and I was like kind of fanning out. And I think I probably read it in part because it lined up with things that I was interested in reading about in my own research, but also because it showed up on some map. I seen one of those kind of cool infographics that I'm always a sucker for, about like one book from each state, and that was the one from California or Southern California, and I was like, oh, I haven't read this, I should check it out. And anytime you open up a book that's kind of like you don't know what to expect, and I try not to know going in. It's always a surprise when it's a book like this, like an all-timer. It's just such an amazing novel. It's the kind of novel that I can't imagine writing, or being able to write, or knowing someone who's able to write it. It's an incredible piece of work that feels like, what it always felt like to me was, the kind of zaniness and energy of Invisible Man, but funny on every page, tight and funny on every line. The poetry in it, this was his first novel, and his background is as a poet. It's just incredible. I mean, whatever he's writing about, I opened it up last night to prepare for this, and it's just getting sucked in by the language. I mean, it moves so rapidly. It's actually very, very easy to consume because the rhythm of it is just so energetic, and you get really drawn in just by the way that the words move and the lines are arranged. And no matter what he's talking about, there are laugh lines everywhere that are really dry, and it's just a wonderful book. I think I like to read novels by poets here and there. I find sometimes that I'm looking for the novel part, and I feel like this gives best of everything, which is that it holds together as a work of fiction with like a very forceful story, and then of course it meanders, but the meandering is very interesting and kind of and focused in at least thematic way, by this story of Gunnar Hoffman, and then it has all that just tight, fascinating, frequently surprising language.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think it's undeniable his use of language in this book.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, it's not indulgent in places where, like, I think where poets would otherwise be. And it moves so well.
Yeah, it really takes like kind of the care of language that poets tend to have, and then combines it with the best like narrative kind of force that novels tend to have, and brings it together. And it's really just like, you're right, it's like such a joy to read because it's so energetic. Like when I read it like the day before we recorded, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read this book, and I couldn't put it down. And every time I had to put it down to like take care of my dog, I was like, okay, let's just get this done so I can get back to reading, because it's just so like, the language is so energetic and moves it along so well. You know? So good. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like crafted this leading man that's like fascinating, and it's not quite a hero's journey, but he's like living out like, he's gonna, he becomes like a messiah, so in a way it is, but you have
poetry
going. Yeah, exactly. The messiah of poetry and Black people in LA. What did you like make of the LA-ness of it all in this book? Like, how did you relate to how he created this community of Hillside and like other aspects of portraying LA throughout the book?
Yeah, Paul Beatty lives in New York, and he has for a very long time. I think that he is staunchly a New Yorker now. He's not ever coming back here. But he, this book and The Sellout are very, very specific to Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. And the kind of I think Hillside is kind of a made up place that stands in for other neighborhoods, and in The Sellout there's an unincorporated area, or like a separately incorporated area that's right outside LA, and it has that feel of South LA, of kind of exurban LA, and it is very recognizable, and I love the story of the kind of in-betweener character who goes from Santa Monica like skate culture to the South Central culture, and is kind of more comfortable in some ways with the white people, and just the geography of it, and the way that it tracks how he shuffles around with his identity is very cool, and also very LA. I think part of it is like, LA now more so than 90s, but LA is not a very Black place anymore, and so that felt I don't know, that rang really true to me, and just the kind of the way that a Black kid growing up in like a mostly white neighborhood would kind of react to segregation, and just that kind of bounce between worlds. It had a real, it has that texture of reality, even though it's like absurd constantly. It's I think that like there are a lot of versions of this book and a lot of versions on that theme that we see in kind of identity focused literature, and I think a lot of the times it feels really angsty, and that's not a bad thing. I write about like immigrant family angst and stuff like that all the time, but he is able to kind of take the pressure off that angst, just because he's so funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's like he builds the dark humor. It envelops a lot of that in a way, like by making it so funny. That angst gets channeled more into humor rather than, I think, how we see a lot of like identity politic type books being written. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, one of the more fascinating things about it. And I'm curious about like in your own writing about how you, especially with like your household pay, how you craft these characters. Like I think I was reading an interview about you, and you were talking about, wanting to move away from like classic stereotypes, of course. And how do you like go about approaching like, not like exploiting a character, or like creating a character that challenges stereotypes or is like its own full person while addressing these like really heavy topics about race?
Yeah, I think my characters tend to be, especially in Your House Will Pay, I don't avoid archetype, like my Korean family has they have like a liquor store in their background. I wanted to write about Black men who have been incarcerated, and there is baggage that goes with those archetypes, right? And but I also feel like if you avoid archetype too self-consciously, then you you miss out on like the opportunity to write about the way that people live, because, you know, for example, like that kind of Korean family, like that's like a very common experience in that community, right? And yeah, a lot of Black men go to jail for various reasons, and you know, that's something that I wanted to be able to contrast with the fact that, you know, Sunja-do never went to jail. So once you know that you're dealing with archetype, it is extra important to avoid falling into stereotype. And the way that I do that, at least, and I think that the way that most writers are able to do it, is you treat your characters like individuals, you know, just like you would people in the real world, right? You know, hopefully, you give them their own agency. You have them care about things that are particular to them, rather than, you know, solely driven by, you know, their position in society or in their community. And so for me, that comes from a really tight focus on family, because I think that family dynamics are always really individual, and really specific. And so, you know, for example, like the particular relationships that Sean has, you know, and Sean was a lot harder for me to write than Grace, who's a Korean American woman. You know, Sean's a Black guy. You know, the way that I really got to know him and give him like the feeling of a real person was by diving into, you know, the people that he cared about and the particular ways that he relates to them, you know, the kind of tensions within that family, his desires. You know, if you start thinking about people and their individual desires, it's hard to stay in the generalities, because people want such specific things, and the way they get them or the way they're denied them, you know, obviously those intersect with the broader currents of society, but they tend to be pretty rooted in who the characters are.
Yeah, definitely. That I was reading about this book, just about how I think like every story about race is like a kaleidoscope. And so like, no matter where you like put it, it's going to like fracture and look different, because of course everyone is an individual. So everyone's going to carry that differently. And so it's really interesting to see both your book and like thinking about it in comparison to the White Boy Shuffle, like that these experiences are broad, of course, and like, yeah, of course, down to the individual.
I think something that I have noticed in the last, you know, since it seems like publishing has given, you know, a little bit more space to writers of color, you know, I think something that is still harder is for writers of color to write books like this one, which is fucking weird. You know, he's like a weirdo. He's a weird guy who who writes weird books. And I think The Sellout even, I don't think it was expected to be as big as it became, because I think I remember around holiday time, like my friend was trying to find a copy to buy his dad for Christmas, and he like couldn't find one because they didn't print enough. Because they were like, who's, you know, I don't think like anyone expected this like strange ass poetry to, you know, win the first Booker Prize by an American and become like a smash hit. And, you know, even now, like years out from The Sellout, you know, Paul Beatty is kind of in his own little lane. Like he's not, there aren't like droves of Black writers who get to write like whatever they feel like. You know, I think there's still kind of a little bit more of a focus on books that have, you know, this kind of, I mean, look, and this is a book that is very deeply about racial issues and identity and social problems. But I think that it comes at it from such a wacky, oblique angle that I think that it's a weirder book. And it doesn't have the reach of The Sellout just because it didn't have. I doubt it had that kind of marketing behind it. Yeah, I'm like rambling now.
Nobody, those are great points. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like it's like, I think that's absolutely true about Beatty's writing. It's just that like he is operating in a space that no one else is able to. And I think it's also having established himself as that type of writer far before like the contemporary movement we're seeing in like how fiction looks right now, which is a lot more thoughtful, like in interior thought, kind of the anxiety of contemporary writing. I don't think you could find anywhere in Beatty's writing.
It doesn't read like a 2020s novel, and neither does The Sellout.
Right.
It's like, I don't think you can like go to school to like learn how to write these books. It's just
reading about him at school too, like clearly everything at school, everyone was like, you shouldn't be a writer, you're bad at this, like whatever you're doing is not working. So, school's not always the answer, kids. Yeah. I'm curious about like how you like thinking about this book and thinking about your book. They both have like so many cultural reference points, and like obviously it reflects so much on the history of LA. How do you like research and then like decide how you're going to pay homage to like the specific histories of LA?
Oh yeah. So maybe that's kind of what I was starting to think about too. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a very concrete writer. Like, I come from PI novels, which are very grounded in, this is what's outside my window, and this is what happens when you like drive around the city. This is what you're gonna see, and in some ways, it's like it's a kind of direct capture as much as I can of the people that the people that I talk to, the places that I see, the kind of dynamics that I'm able to absorb. And so that comes from, kind of growing up in LA, knowing a lot of people who grew up in LA, and, driving around LA, just knowing this place. I only write about LA, like pretty much. It's, I find it really fascinating and also like really endless. There's no exhausting of the material, and so, my writing is it's driven by kind of like lazy research, which is just talking to people about their experiences, reading some books, watching some documentaries, watching old news footage, stuff like that. It's very, I try to kind of, it's not journalistic. I'm not a journalist, but it is like kind of going around and like picking up pieces and trying to kind of weave them together into something that feels convincing because it's made up of like the fabric of reality, which is like not what Paul Beatty does. I think he does some of that, and it's obvious because like there is something in these books in the White Boy Shuffle that feels very, it feels very lived in, and it feels very kind of brought in from LA, but its surroundings, but it's not like, you would not describe this as a grounded book. It is it's very fanciful and freewheeling. But I think, I wouldn't be surprised if like his kind of method of kind of gathering those pieces also just came from, a little bit of natural experience. And then he kind of puts his like magic dust on it.
I think like specifically thinking, we've been talking just like a little bit since it's like the 30 years since the 92 riots this year. And I think, how did you, with that specific chunk of LA history, like something we just keep revisiting as a concept and finding as like a common theme in LA fiction is just that like how much LA tries as a city buries these really horrific parts of LA history. Like we read Oscar Zeta Acosta right before this, so we were talking a lot about the Chicano movement. And then even just like, even in reading Chandler, like just how this city was built, like that it's such an uneven place. How do you, I'm curious, like with specifically writing about the 92 riots, like how that has lived as a presence, and if that was something that you've like always known you wanted to write about, or like as things have gone in the last few years with the rise of like the BLM movement, did it become more and more prescient to you?
I think because I'm Korean American and I kind of came into my writing life because I wanted to write stories about Korean American LA, I knew that I would at some point write about the early 90s, because that was such a definitive time for the Korean American community here, and in this country. You know, we're not like in the news generally, you know, Korean Americans specifically, Asian Americans even, you know, we're kind of like this hidden slice of US life most of the time. You know, kind of racial dynamics when they're explored in public tend to be drawn along Black and white lines. And then there was this period where Korean Americans in LA were in the national limelight, in a conversation about race. And so, you know, I don't remember that time. I was born in the mid 80s. So I was like 6 in 1992. But it is a time period that has become kind of salient in my understanding of my own city. And so I knew that I was gonna want to tangle with it in some form or another. I didn't know when, I didn't know what the specific book would be until I started reading about Latasha Harlins. And then I knew, you know, because it just felt like that was the story that could, you know, kind of illuminate, you know, because in real life that is the flashpoint of, you know, of talking about like Korean American LA in the 90s, and you know, the tensions between like Koreans and you know, Korean grocers and Black customers, like that's the representative story. So I knew that I was so once I kind of dug into that, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm gonna try to go at it. I'm gonna try to take a go at Korean American LA, like through this really complicated prism. I will also add, like, you know, I have, you know, like, I think like a lot of Angelenos, I have a lot of pride in the city, and I also think that it could be way better. But I'm also aware that there aren't places that are a lot better, you know. In that way, I think it's a very American city, in that it does not meet its own ideals, you know, it's not successful on its own terms. But it's hard to see a place that is. So we always have to kind of strive for something that we haven't seen yet, which is frustrating and scary, and yet totally necessary. You know, and I think that's and I think that kind of connects with like Hollywood culture, and you know, this separation between image and reality, that is inherent and to every American place, you know, maybe every place in the world, but also, you know, kind of ties in with the fact that we are the dream factory.
I think that like LA literature specifically is such an interesting like representation of LA, because it's like kind of the only place where Hollywood doesn't seem to exist all the time, or doesn't need to like be in it.
Yeah.
And so I often wonder if like that's why LA doesn't seem like a literary city, which it is, but that's why we made this podcast, is because people don't think it is. So I'm curious what your like like your idea of like the LA literary city is, or like what the future of LA as like a literary city could be.
Yeah, I grew up here, and it wasn't until college that I read an LA novel. And it was in short succession, because it was in a class on American detective fiction. I read The Big Sleep, and I read Devil in a Blue Dress, and I was just like, whoa. Like The Big Sleep was the first one, and Chandler is in a lot of the ways the reason that I became a writer. My first book was like a direct response to a Chandler novel. And I think that what really struck me about both of those books, which are period novels, written many, many years before I had read them, is that like they kind of captured a different LA from the one that I knew, but I could recognize it. And it was the sprawl of the place, that feeling of multiplicity, and like kind of endless possibility. That also goes with the PI genre, by the way, that really fascinated me. And so that's how I came in, with this idea that like LA is this place full of mystery, full of these neighborhoods where you can kind of walk or drive a couple miles and, go from world to world. And that's what struck me about those books, almost 20 years ago. And that's kind of still what keeps me at the table. The fact that you can never run out of stories to tell. And since publishing, I mean, and since before publishing too, but like since coming across Chandler and Mosley, I've read a lot more LA fiction, but it's more because I seek it out. This wasn't stuff that was like assigned in class, even in LA. And yeah, it's really vibrant, and I know a lot of writers who are based here, a lot of writers who are from here, and the things that people are concerned with, even within the subset of people that like write fiction, it's pretty broad, and it captures a lot of the different facets that make up this place. I think I'm very proud of LA's literary scene, and literary culture. I think Skylight is a big part of this. I obviously love this bookstore. I met Paul Beatty there. I've met a lot of friends actually at Skylight. It's because it's a hub of the LA lit scene. But it's very rich. It's very accepting. I think I forget who said this, but I think J. Ryan Stradle said this to me. He said, in like New York publishing is such a big thing, and it's so dominant. And in LA, we're just all us like little fiction writers are like, we're like over here, and then like Hollywood is right here, right? And there are like a million screenwriters. So we're just kind of like, the fiction crowd is smaller, and we're not really like the main thing going on here. None of us are famous, it's just, so we just get to like write our books and like hang out and talk about them. It's great.
So chill. I love it. Yeah. I really think it's like a fantastic note to end this on, and to end our season on, because like what a positive vibe for LA writing. And it's been so great to talk to you, and like, just have such a fabulous representative of the LA scene with us.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I mean, Skylight has been a big part of my life this last 10 years. So happy to do this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Steph.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Skylight Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylightbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.